Hello and welcome to our April third-party roundup webinar with Syxsense. Today, we have our industry expert, John Cassell, here to give us an inside look into the newest third-party patch releases. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat and John will reach out after to answer those. And with that, I'll pass things over to John Cassell.
Hi, everyone. John Cassell with Syxsense. Thank you for attending this month's third-party roundup webcast. Today, like every month, or end of the month, every month, I should say, I'll be covering some of the most popular third-party applications that have received updates since last month's webcast. There have been a number of security bulletins and advisories throughout the month, as well as multiple version updates across various products. However, it's an interesting month. It's actually, I should have raised this last month as we were aware of it. Before we start, the elephant in the room, the backlog with the National Vulnerability Database. If you haven't heard, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, reported a growing backlog of vulnerabilities submitted to the NVD that still require analysis. Their announcement reported that it's based on a variety of factors, including an increase in software, and therefore vulnerabilities, as well as a change in interagency support, to quote their advisory. What this means is that the most trusted source for severity scores is behind, and many disclosed CVEs still have no score. NIST's announcement continued that the agency is prioritizing analysis of the most significant vulnerabilities. In addition, they are working with agency partners to bring on more support and have assigned more NIST staff to this task. The announcement ended looking to include the establishment of a consortium of industry, government, and other stakeholder organizations that can collaborate on research to improve the database. I wanted to first address this as this will impact much of how this webcast has typically ran month after month regarding base scores and, of course, who we trust to get our information to prioritize. Not just detection of vulnerabilities, but especially more the patch side of things like today's webcast. In the past, we have covered different general metrics to prioritize patches according to the vulnerabilities that they're built to resolve. At Syxsense, we look at 6 key factors. First, we consider the vendor's severity, which ranges from critical severity to non-applicable, and is provided directly by the update manufacturer. While it is crucial to check vendor severity, historically, some of the things that we've noticed throughout the years is worth noting that the rating can be biased. Many third-party updates don't receive severity ratings from manufacturers to avoid highlighting their product or application negatively. To address this, we again have historically prioritized the industry severity, such as the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, the CVSS score, calculated none other by NIST. The score ranges, and apologies for any background noise, the score ranges from 0 to 10, with higher ratings indicating a higher likelihood of exploitation. The current problem with the NVD backlog is that for many different updates, we're going to have to rely mainly on the manufacturer's security assessment, or severity assessment rather, for security, giving us a less diversified overall assessment, which again can be concerning. Vulnerabilities can also be actively exploited in the wild, posing an immediate risk to individuals and environments through sophisticated attacks. These cases should increase our priority to resolve exploits, and without a CVSS score to factor into it, we should, of course, pay closer attention to security bulletins and any articles that you may come across. Similarly, when vulnerabilities are publicly disclosed, it means that the bug's details have already been exposed to the industry. While this doesn't necessarily mean active exploitation, it signifies that the information needed to weaponize the vulnerability is available, often through bug bounty programs, independent researchers, the manufacturer, or especially if you attend a security conference, it might be one of the hot topics from one of the speakers or sessions that you might attend. Countermeasures are essential and come in a few different forms, like mitigations, such as configurations from antiviruses or EDR solutions that halt the vulnerabilities exploitation without requiring an urgent patch deployment. And then workarounds, more preventative, such as registry changes or policy adjustments, which also, again, prevent exploitation. For example, Microsoft may provide a recommended policy or registry change instead of an out-of-band update. And then as well, we always look to preventative measures or best practices, such as CIS benchmarks, level 1, 2, for your said operating system or your application or your suite, especially to ensure that those are being met as well to, again, prevent any type of issues in the future. Lastly, we consider exposure, which is provided by the tool or the solution that is used to scan, detect, and report outstanding vulnerabilities across the device fleet. Every environment is unique with various operating system versions. Understanding the vulnerability landscape helps us efficiently and effectively target endpoints for remediation. So we're going to jump into it. Today's going to be a little bit different. If you've attended the webcast in the past, we'll actually not be going through a slide deck like where we started off here. I actually want to instead provide a little bit more of an interactive approach in case you want to go ahead and look for, say, updates or finding out about advisories from some of the major manufacturers, which we'll be covering today. Want to instead kind of show you how we can find that directly without the use of any type of collection tool, but rather how we can manually find that information from, in this case, most of the cases, the manufacturer. Third-party products, again, that we'll be discussing today have all received updates since last month and all resolve some sort of vulnerability. Most products mentioned have some sort of advisory, especially many receiving alerts from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and some as well you may want to pay attention to if you're talking about known exploited vulnerabilities, which CISA does provide on their site. I, again, want to ditch the slide deck, so we'll just be going through this directly throughout a few of the vendors' pages. First off, I usually just cover these in the same order. Adobe specifically is always first. You may or may not actually be impacted by any of the applications. The reason I do cover them first, though, is that they do line up formally with the Microsoft Patch Tuesday release date, which is the second Tuesday of every month. And sorry for background noise. This is expected, again, the second Tuesday of every month, which is great because we don't have to kind of figure out when are they going to drop an update like many other manufacturers we're looking at today. These updates, again, dropped on that date. These include products like After Effects, Photoshop, Commerce, InDesign, Experience Manager, Media Encoder, Bridge, Illustrator, and Animate. The following products affect Windows and Mac OS devices. That would be After Effects, Photoshop, InDesign, looking through my list, Bridge, Illustrator, and Animate. So if you happen to actually have, say, a marketing team or a creative team in any way that might be using these products for video editing, anything like that, or maybe you're a consumer of these products, of course, want to patch it yourself, be sure to get the latest or check the advisory and get the latest version updates. From a security standpoint, there weren't actually a lot of CVEs resolved. Many of these products have actually only had one important issue. So just for the sake of time, I'm just going to drill into the bigger ones here today. One, just because of exposure and because most of us have heard about it, Adobe Photoshop. This actually did not have a critical issue in any way, just an important issue with a CVSS. Fortunately, it did receive a base score of 5.5. Leading to memory leak if this particular vulnerability is exploited. We'll cover vendor priority in just a moment, but moving on to some other updates, looking or focusing rather on severity. Adobe Commerce did have two critical exploits, both patched in the latest release. This is not actually an application per se. I believe this is more open source code you can grab or rather through cloud services, but they are near critical, an 8.1 and a 9 CVSS base score. Adobe as well did stamp both of them with a critical rating. Media Encoder is another that had a critical advisory, which if exploited could lead to arbitrary code execution. Fortunately, it's just one particular vulnerability. Lastly, Illustrator and Animate had a few. Illustrator had 3 criticals resolved with 1 important, not on what I would consider critical ratings. I usually look at critical as being 8 or above when we're looking at CVSS scores. We do have attack metrics, so we could assess this, and of course, Adobe did assess and stamped it with critical. The other would be Adobe Animate, which also had 2 critical issues. Fortunately, out of all products, when we look at the vendor severity, again, some of these did get rated with critical. That's their assessment of each vulnerability. But overall, every single advisory for every product that we're looking at on the screen, those mentioned, all have a lower vendor priority of 3. Usually, when you look at a scale of severity, the higher you go up, of course, the more concerning. They flip the model, so the lower the score, the more concerning. If it's publicly exploited, they'll probably stamp it with a 2. I'm sorry, if it's publicly disclosed, they'll stamp it with a 2, and if it was actively exploited in the wild, then they'll probably stamp it with a 1. But fortunately, they're all 3, so a little bit less likely. The next product, which we're all aware of, we'll probably use, at least in some way, if we're talking about Chrome derivatives too, would be Google Chrome. We'll talk as well about one of those derivatives that's also very popular, Microsoft Edge. Chrome has had a number of releases, a few that we want to actually take a look at today. I have a few links here. Actually, let's just jump into it. We want to cover every single release, but something is very interesting. Looking at the last month, and I don't know if this has much to do, I'm kind of just spitballing and maybe just mentioning a little bit more from a personal standpoint. I cover the bug bounty details, and sorry, I'm just going to go to the beginning of the month here. Cover bug bounty details when there are issues disclosed by external researchers, and something that I noticed, which is not common, is the payouts were much larger this last month. I don't know if that's much to do with the fact that, again, nothing had to be really disclosed. There wasn't really much of a process there with MBD. I'm not sure if maybe the external researcher was asking for more cash to to lower their assessment. I'm not really sure. I don't want to go that far, but it is of concern. It is interesting, especially for a lot of, here's the first one starting March 26th, the day of our last webcast, which for the 8th month was them dropping an update on our last webcast. So we might actually circle back before we end today's, see if they did drop another update. But based on a number of these particular fixes, it is interesting that a $10,000 payout just for one particular vulnerability. And as we go through these, they're much larger than normal. Usually it'd be $500, $1,000, $2,000, maybe $6,000, maybe $8,000. I've seen some that are this large, but they're not consistently throughout the month with every release paying out nearly $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 for a particular disclosed issue. Now, starting with the 26th, we do have one critical issue, a use after free issue in Angle reported by Cassidy Kim. The only one that did actually get bug bounty payout, with one still being determined. I'm sure that one will actually also have a pretty hefty sum. Overall, there were 7 security fixes, but again, 4 disclosed within this specific version. If we go back, or rather, if we go forward in time, the next one was April 2nd. There were 3 total security fixes, with all 3 being disclosed by external researchers. This didn't have a significant payout. Between the two, only $10,000 total, but again, still a little larger than normal. All of these are rated, again, high severity, with 2 of them being specific to the V8 JavaScript engine. We go forward in time to April 10th. That'll be the next release. I think it's on the next page. April 10th had an advisory, and this is the interesting one. Out of the 3 security fixes, all 3 were again publicly disclosed, or sorry, disclosed by external researchers for a total of $41,000 in bounties. One of them collecting $21,000 alone, which again is a little higher than normal, what I typically see. So I don't know if much of this is correlated or related in any way to the fact that the backlog exists within MBD, but again, something to think about. All of them are rated as high severity across different portions of the product. The next release takes us actually to April 16th, where there was a much larger release, 23 total security fixes, 14 of them disclosed by external researchers, and a pretty hefty payout of $65,000 total. Again, quite interesting. 4 were rated high, 6 medium, and 4 low, all across different portions, again, of the web browser itself. And then moving forward, the last one that we tracked, which again, we'll see if something changes today, is on, or go forward one step, sorry guys, to April 24th. 4 security fixes, with 3 of them being disclosed by other researchers. One of them the only one that actually got a payout, which has not, has already been determined, and 2 others have not been determined yet, was a critical issue with a $16,000 payout. If it's critical, I'd understand a little bit more, but for high severity payouts to be fairly larger, not something I typically see. Now, we did start this looking at that first page, so just to verify, I'll check it before the call ends today. Again, for the 8th month, they've dropped an update on our webcast, which is the last Tuesday of the month. So again, I'm seeing some cadence here that they will probably drop it on the last Tuesday of every month. Let's move forward onto Edge. We're not going to focus too much on MS Edge today, but just looking at a few of the releases, they did have 7 since our last webcast. 2 of them are actually very small releases just after last month's webcast on March 27th. One was for version 1.2.2, and the other was for version 1.2.3. We saw the same cadence when we looked at April 4th release. And if we go down to a few of these, we're not going to notice much, no bug details, nothing really there. However, the April 4th release for version 1.2.3 did actually have Edge-specific vulnerabilities. And we can get there to see what those are by clicking on this link. It'll send us to another page where the CVEs have been tracked, and we can click on each one of these vulnerabilities. Now, these again are specific to Edge, even though it shares Chromium code, or rather leverages it. There are additional vulnerabilities in the application itself. Fortunately, with what CVSS assessment has already taken place, they're not very high or exploitable. One of them is a spoofing vulnerability in 29981, and then the other 29049 is a 4.1 score within WebView 2, but also spoofing related. The rest of the metrics are always provided from their release notes, which I do appreciate. Many others do as well. If you look at the CVE, you can get a little bit more around those metrics, find out specifically how or what actually, if it were exploited, it could compromise, such as confidentiality, integrity, that kind of thing. But I do appreciate them in their release notes specifically. Another release to highlight for today would be from April 18th. Not actually from these vulnerabilities, but actually if we go back to the main release notes, there were a lot of feature updates dropped within the April 18th release of Microsoft Edge. In total, we won't go through every single one of them. There are 15 feature updates, 3 new policies. Just to list out a few of those feature updates: email notifications for extension requests in the management service, enterprise secure AI controls, which also had a policy, and a bunch of others that you can view again from here. Some updates to Copilot. Definitely great that we're getting some more features for browsers that at least I typically use Edge. I use all 3, in fact, we talk about today for different kind of solutions, but it's great to see that, of course, we are receiving those updates. There were 3 additional Edge-specific vulnerabilities. I think just for the sake of time, we'll move on when it comes to Edge. But if you are using the browser, do make sure that it is getting the latest version update. And then as well, if you are restricting any of the policies, do be sure to take a look at that. You might have to change a bit of your policy internally for how your end users are being restricted. We're not going to spend too much time on the next product, which we do cover usually month after month. As it is more of an open source product, we get a lot of disclosed information, and we don't have to worry too much about, is it biased? This would be, of course, in the Mozilla project, specifically Firefox. The only one that I actually want to highlight is there were 4 releases, a few of them minor releases, will be version 125.0.1. This brought Firefox to version 125, but we noticed right on their advisory, they actually were about to move to 125.0, but noticed that there was a high severity issue. So they actually immediately moved to 0.1. Quite kind of interesting. I hadn't seen that in the past few years. Number of new features for Firefox, including text highlighting, few visual enhancements, of course, a number of bug fixes. And when we look at the security fixes, there were a number of high severity issues. 9 high severity issues were solved in this release, including our typical memory bug safety issues, 5 moderate fixes, and 1 low severity. So if you happen to be using this browser as well, or using a product with common code like Thunderbird, do be sure to upgrade. Another interesting one, which actually highlights, again, a bit of our need for a better score or severity, was around PuTTY and any other product leveraging PuTTY code, which also includes FileZilla, WinSCP, got an ad here, and other products as well that might be leveraging that or rather the protocols and controls in SSH functionality. So do make sure that you're also updating these products. There was a vulnerability tracked to CVE 2024-31497, and this was around public key recovery that could, of course, be exploited. Now, when we click on this, or rather check the MVD, which I wanted to do kind of more interactively here today, we'll see that we don't really have much information. We have detail on the vulnerability. We have products affected. We have plenty of linked articles regarding this vulnerability, but again, no base score. The assessment has not yet been provided. So this is a bit about, again, what I wanted to mention today around how we're not going to talk so much about prioritization, but just look at what the vendor is stating. As much information that we can collect. The biggest one, of course, would be if you're using any of the products today, upgrade as soon as possible. So that's, again, the main point. We're just talking about whether it applies to us or not. The vulnerabilities, prioritizing any further from there, unfortunately, we are missing a lot of data in the industry for vulnerabilities such as these. A big advisory, which we see typically quarterly, would be from, in this case, Oracle. Their critical patch advisory dropped. Last time we talked about it was last January. So the April release actually updated 119 separate products. A lot of products, of course, here. I don't want to get too much into operating system vulnerabilities, as we do want to focus a little bit more on applications for this webcast topic, but plenty of course, other Oracle applications are affected. The big one would be Java, since we, of course, leverage Java in a lot of other products applications too, such as Adoptium, Amazon Corretto, and of course, everyone knows Java is. You may or may not actually need to update it. You may actually have of course, specific versions required for your business. Fortunately, running old versions of Java are concerning, so always see if there's a way to get out of that old version and get onto the latest so that you can resolve those vulnerabilities and rely on, of course, a process that does not involve as many exploits. There were a few things I noticed here when I kind of dug through their information. There were 13 separate fixes for Java, 10 remotely exploitable without authentication. And I noticed that one of them, CVE 2023-41993, is probably out of place. When I looked this up, it actually points to macOS Sonoma. So I don't know if it's the year. I actually tried to kind of switch a few of these numbers out. If maybe they just got the year wrong. Maybe the ID is wrong, but this doesn't appear to match the line item that we see here. So this is a little bit concerning. It actually pointed when I went to this to another vulnerability with a 9.1 score. So if you're using Sonoma, that's actually a little bit more concerning than the vulnerability on the screen, but I definitely had discrepancies with this particular row. In either case, of course, if you are using Java or any of its derivatives, be sure to update. Some additional products that have seen updates since the start of the month include Audacity, Bitwarden, Citrix products, including WebEx, Cisco products, including WebEx, Citrix products, Dropbox, Foxit Reader, Genesis Cloud, View, Jenkins, Malwarebytes. I'm listing them all off, guys. Power BI, Opera, RingCentral, Screen Connect, Skype, Slack, Snagit, TeamViewer, Thunderbird, VirtualBox, WinMerge, WinSCP again, and Zoom. Normally I throw a slide on the screen. I have a template that I throw all these different manufacturer names into. Didn't seem like much sense since I actually had way more than I had slots on the slides. So I figured to just go ahead and rattle those off. If you heard any products in what I just mentioned that might affect you personally or your environment, again, update as soon as possible because prioritization is the challenge this month and hopefully not for the coming months, but we're definitely gonna be seeing this probably for the next few weeks at least. Lastly, we do talk about Apple on this webcast. It's not really, of course, the third-party product per se. They do have some applications, but I do like to cover it just to inform my Apple audience, and especially with routine 0 days that we have seen within Apple products, which is a good thing that we are actually seeing them being patched. But of course, it is concerning that there are a number of vulnerabilities disclosed. They've had minimal updates. As you can see on the screen, not a lot to actually prioritize, which is good if you are a heavy Apple environment, or even if you got a mix in anyway. For the past 6 months and even longer, we've seen a lot of updates drop for a lot of various products, nothing specific. Every version of macOS, every version of iPad and iOS for any of the mobile products, and any peripherals. We've even seen some for firmware and other devices too, like Vision Pro. Do be sure to always check, of course, with those systems. Training as well for end users to check for updates and not defer them is very important. And as well, check your app store for any additional applications that I may not have discussed today. It's the typical channel for pushing updates to third-party products on Apple systems, even if it's your personal iPhone. make sure everything is updated. I think that's it for today. We'll actually go to my last slide here. There we go. Hope it's been informative and useful to everyone. If you enjoy the form of today's webcast, different from the past, let me know. If you hated it, that's fine too. Want to do something a little bit different, please contact us, let us know. Something that I always want to leave everyone with: the Syxsense team identifies, classifies, and pre-checks various updates and as well vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that affect common endpoints and servers. If you'd like to get a full listing of all the various issues that may impact your environment, be sure to check our website, under resources. You will see a link to the vulnerability database. What I also love about the vulnerability library is that we don't only just discuss level of impact, like everybody else, but we do offer screenshots, step-by-steps, recommendations, and resolutions to every issue. Not to get a lot into the product, a number of those are actually prepackaged in the Syxsense solution, but the reason that I like to focus more on the vulnerability database, it is free. So you can hit up the website and see what you might have to reconfigure within the registry of your system. Go to the manufacturer's website where we do provide links. I would have said you can get the CVE information and get the attack metrics too, but we know that that's not as reliable as of late. But then as well, you have all of those group policy and registry changes you can again also apply. If you have any further questions, concerns, or suggestions for improvement, again, we would love to hear it. Thank you for your time and happy patching.